Hello, Pat. Hello, Karen. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you being with us this afternoon or this morning, depending where you are. So I'm Isabelle Bilrer-Reyem. I'm the Business Development Director at DALIM Software. I'm very glad to be today with two prestigious person, Karen, who is a Creative Operation Manager at Boden, and Pag Magru from the Magru Group, who is an expert in workflow and communication technology. Hello, Karen. So the stage is you. Could you please introduce shortly yourself?
Yes, sure. So I've been at Boden for a very long time, 16 years in May. We look at a lot of workflows, bottlenecks, unlock everything, and try and find ways to improve and get the teams to work in the most efficient way.
Hello, Pat. So thank you, Karen.
Yep.
Hello, Pat. Thank you for being with us. It's yours. Please give us a short introduction about yourself.
Okay. I'll go. So, hi, I'm Pat McGrew. I'm managing director for McGrew Group, and my life is spent unclogging bottlenecks in workflows and helping people expand their best practices.
So let's dig into our today's subject, which is about unlock your brand assets. Today, there's an interesting study conducted by the B2B Content Institute, which revealing actually the number on the quantity of assets brands are using to communicate about their products. They are usually, on average, using up to 13 channels. It could be more, but this is on average. And what is also very important to notify is that all those channels, they require different kind of assets. So it's very important for creative team to be able to produce this content. And this is an ever growing number of content which is to be produced. Another interesting study is coming from e-shoppers, and e-shoppers are expecting when buying a product to get between 4 to 8 different pictures about the different products. So what is interesting is that young generation and the oldest generation, they expect to get 8 different kind of assets. On average, we have something like the bare minimum is 3 assets. On average, we have up to 7, 5 to 8 different assets to communicate on e-commerce sites. We have brands which are having some very extensive communication. People like Adidas, for example, for a product, they have up to 28 different photos for the product, whereas a company like H&M, they have 13 different photos for the different products. So, Pat, first question for you. What do you observe at your side regarding brands and content production strategy? Can you give us an overview?
Sure. So, Isabel, one thing I would say is that when you look at this data that we are looking at now and the previous chart, one of the things that you notice is that these are studies that were conducted and finalized during the middle of last year. So what we know is that even since the middle of last year, this move to creating multiple assets per channel has even grown, because as more people were locked in, they were being communicated with via more channels, not only blog posts and emails, but instant messages to their phones via WhatsApp, through app-based marketing channels associated directly with the brand. So it has simply exploded. So one of the things we know is that as companies had to increase their number of assets that they were using, they needed to find new ways to get control of what they had. And we found that not all marketers actually had a content marketing strategy that included automation of management of those assets. And while you see that big 36% over there saying, yes, we have one, but it's not documented, that is a little bit scary. 43% said yes, they had it and it was documented, but then also look at those with no plans and no, but they plan to within 12 months. Fundamentally, everyone who is sitting in the orange, the gray, and the green have some work to do, because if as the asset numbers explode, trying to get control of them gets harder and harder. So what we want is to advise everyone to look at these content management systems with respect to how they can get control. Right. So one of the things we noted from some work that we were doing is that, look, brands have more and more assets. They have more teams, but those teams may also be smaller than they have been in the past. And so the automation becomes absolutely essential. If you can't quantify the assets that you have, if you don't really, you haven't really taken a look at what you have, think of it in this way. We know of archives that have already grown to a zettabyte. A zettabyte is a really, really big number. If you start to look at the storage requirements, it is the equivalent of 250 billion DVDs. It is a lot of data. And so how do you manage it? You automate it and you tag it so that you can not only control when it gets used so it's used appropriately, but also make sure that you can get back to it. And remember that meta tagging is more than saying, hi, this is a picture of a sweater. It's also the use characteristics, the expiration characteristics. You need to maintain all of that information for every asset that might represent your brand. I think that that's the most important takeaway in every engagement that I'm involved in.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, especially when you're talking that more than half of the company, they claim to have a strategy, but in reality, they are not able to demonstrate that they have a strategy. Karen, regarding Boden, how does it translate at your place? Because I know that you've been quite active on that. So could you help us to get a better understanding of what was the journey on your side?
Yes, absolutely. So just to give a little background for those who don't know the brand, so we are online retailer and started pretty much exactly 30 years ago. We celebrated our 30th anniversary and started really small in 1991. And as the company has grown, and I've kind of grown with it as well, because obviously going into different markets, being mail order first, but then having to move obviously with the digital transformation online, number of images being captured and going into different places, print versus online, we don't have the same workflow. So we really had to consider, consolidate, map out, look at the bottlenecks and have a very clear vision. To give you an idea, like we have, a shop, a lot of partnerships with John Lewis, Zalando, Nordstrom, Tmall, Secret Sale, Zulily, Brand Alley, and all these places, they might have their own requirements for images. So we shoot for our website, but they might require something that is cut out, that is shot on a mannequin, or the edits that we use for our catalog will not be suitable for their website. So we need to consider all of this, which means that we've had to shoot and repro a lot more assets. So obviously you can't do that if you don't have workflows being able to tell which images are going to go into which channel and also across the various markets. The first market that we opened to was the US, which is a huge market, obviously. But then we went into Europe with Germany, Austria, France, and most recently, and that's where I think the partnerships are really interesting versus trying to sell on our website, is for when you're going into markets such as China, where, it's going to be really difficult to find someone to do the translations for us. So we just have to send them our images, and they can pull the information through on their website. So you can find efficiencies like this through partnership, and marketplace is really an area that's growing for us.
May I ask you one question, Karen? What is the average number of images you are using per product at Boden?
So roughly, I think we see on the next slide, that's our kind of minimum amount of shots. We do still photography. We always have a front shot and a detail. For some of our products like children's wear, there's a lot of details in the appliques, so we do front, back, side. And then we also have what we are renowned for, which is our lifestyle imagery, where we go and shoot on location. And obviously that's going to go on the catalog, and we might be using, there will be a lot of edits of that one shot, one that will work for a feature maybe we are doing, if that top is a key seller for us. So that's really the minimum amount of images. I just had a look before this conference to just check on them using the metadata that I've got on the images. And just for, if I look at our summer for 2021, which means it's 2 months, March and April, we have 5,000 of images just for women's wear.
So you are,
and that's just for 2 months.
Yes.
Yeah, worth of.
So you are exactly on this trend with a ever-growing number of asset photos, I suppose also video, and you need to get more content, and of course you need to get speed and agility. So with this growing number of asset production requirements, what are the different options to scale actually? Because the first one you would see is to put more people in the creative team to be able to address it, but it may be a little bit costly. So Pat, would you have some other alternative you would recommend? What would you do first when you go on and visit the brand for the first time? What would be your first advice to them?
So the very first thing we do is we look across what they're doing and we try to assess how they're managing their assets today. And you might find anything. You might find someone who is keeping everything in file folders with a name on them and hoping that they'll be able to find that folder when they need it. You might find an image like you see here from one of my clients who had lots and lots of Post-it notes to try and help them understand where things needed to be and when they needed to be there and what all the touch points were. So we look for what level of organization they have today, and then we try to build a bridge because we know people aren't consistent. We know they're not going to do the things exactly the same way every single time. We know that if someone goes on vacation, the person who backs them up might operate differently and the results may not be as expected. So we're looking for a way to regularize and normalize. And certainly what that means is we need to put in place a workflow system that will allow us to use the content in the way it's intended to be used. So this image that you see is from a study that I recently did with a client where we were trying to identify all of the touch points that might happen in a typical print buying cycle for an organization. So think print, think Eve, think putting things on mobile apps. Many, many people are involved. And if every one of those people cannot rely on the asset that's being passed to them to use, you wind up with chaos. So you absolutely want to be looking at a very robust content management system that allows you to tag every asset, tag it robustly, not just with a name, but with a lot of the characteristics, its use characteristics, its copyright characteristics, its licensing characteristics, and then make sure that the entire team is actually using the system that you implement. Because another very common problem when I walk into an organization is that they have invested in great workflow solutions and only half the teams are using it.
So the first thing I understand, this is to be able to map your process on paper and to understand the way you are working. Karen, you went through this journey with your team. So what was the approach you had?
So just like Pat's picture, I've got one that looked exactly the same. Like, and it's really useful to really understand what everyone is doing, what's involved at every stage. And initially, when you're in one team and you just think, things happen by magic before and after. But when you drill down and you get everyone to see from start to finish what is happening, you can really see where there's duplication of work, where things are there just because it's legacy and no one questions why they're doing things. So yes, process mapping was really the first thing. And that's digital transformation, which is also including growing the platform of social, such as Instagram and Facebook, and they need content, nearly every day to tell the story, to keep the customer engaged. So that's a lot to take on. And yes, you can't grow the team at the same proportion as the number of images that are needed. That would be really crazy. So the customer now has got much bigger expectations. They want to have the right product at the right time, relevant and timely communication, and also personalized experience. That not only helps the customer, but it helps us also sell more if you show what they want. So for us having a central place for all these images was essential. It was not long ago, if I look at it, that we were navigating through folders, and that's not something that can be sustainable to find things. So really the key information that you wanted was, okay, where's the image that relates to that product? I have a code or I have a title. You should be able to find it just by typing that code in. Also creating automation, like obviously you can't rely just on one agency for all that you do, because that's just not sustainable either. If one goes down, then you go down with them. So having workflows that enable us to work with different partners and really know what image to send where and at what time. So that's done through creating automation, and that's it. Future-proofing goes with opening it up to different partners. So how did we achieve that? First of all, we needed to start like small and then go bigger. So finding what the key idea is against an image. So that's always going to be against what we call the metadata. And that we capture it from the image. Our teams were used to try and code like with product codes, but then it would go everywhere. So I think if we go on the next slide, we can get information from when the team shoots, so we can know who the shoot producer is, who the art director is, what product they've been shooting by scanning barcodes. So you know that you've got a source of truth against your product. So in terms of workflow, we are looking at it from we shoot and then we need to edit. With digital, we shoot so much. There's an editing process that needs to happen. Otherwise, if we're already in zillion of megabytes, I can't remember the word you use, Pat, but
zettabytes.
Yes, you'd get there very quickly if you weren't editing. And obviously the designers, then they get a good amount of choice of images, and being able to only send the stuff that's being used to repro for retouching, because we want our product to really be the same color as it will be when she receives our package. So yes, through workflow and automation, you can send the right thing at the right time to the right place. And these statuses are also part of the metadata, as in, you know where they are in the production process. You know you can enable people to download only stuff that is ready to publish and not anything else. Whereas before it would be just emails. Can I use this? And then the production team would pull their hair out, really. So yeah, that's been the key thing for us, workflow and metadata.
And when you're talking, Karen, about workflow, so you mean internal workflow with a different department inside Boden, but I see you're also including some provider, repo houses, and that's correct?
That's right. So these little arrows that you see on the previous slide represent kind of where the image goes outside of Boden to be retouched by X or Y agency. If it's a children's wear shoot or women's wear shoot, they'll go to different places, and then they'll come back to us, and that updates the status. So yes, if we look at the image status, we start with, on a lifestyle shoot, okay, it's a wider select, like the art directors have shot them, but are we really happy for the designers to use them? Yes or no? We get the art directors to approve them, and then they go to the next stage, which is ready for design. So here, as an example, you can see that it's probably a too far away shot to really sell the product and also see the cute little face of that little baby. So we're only going to make that other one ready for design. Now, once the designers have access to that imagery, if we go on the next slide, they will, and that's the great thing, there are some application within design where you can automate and send to repro from an InDesign file. It will send the image to the right place, so that we know, okay, this image, I can use it, it's going to come back. I know it's being retouched. So people, if they want to start downloading things, they can start building a private collection with these. And then once the retouching is done, the image comes back, it updates the status, and it's ready to publish. That is also a way to avoid duplicating images, having the same image with the same file name in different places, and then you don't know why it's there 2, 3, 4 times. You just have one source of truth, which is the image, and it just moves along its statuses.
Okay. So thank you. This is really clear, the way you are proceeding and the workflow you put in place to make it happening. So let's now imagine I've been promoted creative operation manager at DALIM Brands, and we are reselling some consumer goods, and we do have different kind of product. And of course, we want to go to e-commerce. We have all kind of communication channels and promoting our product, different platform, different way. And of course, I need to scale the production that you are currently doing of assets while controlling my cost. So the good point is that now I have your recipe, I have your example, Karen, I have Pat recipe. But what else would you recommend me to do, Pat, to be successful?
So the first thing is to not panic. One thing that people hear when they hear workflow automation and they hear meta tagging is they worry that they're going to lose creative control over their assets and how they're used. I've heard this from so many roundtables, and so first of all, know that you will continue to be the creative person, right? You will be able to continue to make decisions about your distinctive brand needs. But you must bring yourself to understand that codifying and streamlining your business processes is the only way to survive the explosion of the assets. And that means people who are creative, who are used to keeping things on sticky notes and on whiteboards, have got to re-educate themselves about how to use the software that they've been provided to maintain their sanity. I think that might be the best way of looking at it. It's going to create all this reliability. It's going to improve communication. And if you do these things, you will have access to the data that will prove to you that you are being as efficient as possible while being as creative as possible, right? Because we don't want to lose the creativity. We just want to maintain our assets in a way that we know are reliable, that we're using them legally, that we're using them to license, and that we're putting the right assets into the right channel. So follow your data, follow your people, making sure your people are using the solution that has been provided to them, and then make sure that you keep going back and revisiting your processes to make sure you're continuing to be efficient. Because Karen mentioned, the addition of Instagram, there's Facebook, but when you add TikTok into the mix, now all of a sudden you're also managing video. And as new platforms arrive, maybe you have a Clubhouse channel, maybe you have the new Facebook Live channel, maybe the new LinkedIn channel. You will need to maintain assets for all of those as well. It's going to keep exploding.
Okay, thanks, Pat. Karen, my boss just told me that he met you recently, and he explained me how successful you were at Boden, growing the production of asset, how you've been controlling your production while not increasing cost. So what would be your best advice? So I want to meet with you, and we meet at a bar yesterday night, and what would be your advice?
The preparation, if you think about anything, if you're going to make a change, you need to prep for it. Like, don't just, it's good to hear people telling you, oh, you should, we are using this system and you should use it. It's really find out what you need. So meeting with the teams, mapping out the workflows, questioning everything. As I said earlier, if you, why are people doing the things that they do, and is there actually a reason for it? Thinking big is also a good way to go about it, because you can straight away think about, don't let what people do now stop you from finding out, well, if you could have anything, what would it be? And actually, you could quickly find out that it is possible. And then attending a lot of these types of conferences I found really useful, meeting with various people and getting to understand their own solution, but also their problems. And we tend to see that we all have the same problems. But the users, really keeping them engaged, like whoever is going to need to be in that system need to be involved from the very beginning, because as you said, Pat, user adoption is essential, because if people are not using it, then all the work that you've put in just goes to be for nothing. And I've also found that having a really close relationship with your IT and your tech departments, because is important. You need the technology to be supported by the infrastructure, and because that could go down really quickly as well. So, and get them to get the IT team to understand what's the need and the business, what the business is getting out of this.
Okay, thank you. So as a summary, I would say, so the first thing I will have to do tomorrow morning when I come back to the office, this is to think about mapping my process, my business process. Then I will inquire and look for some advice on the internet conferences to find out what is the best tool to address my requirements. And then this is to build a team and to get all the feedback, and not only my team, but also all people working on the system. So thanks to you, Karen, thanks to you, Pat, I think I have a lot of good advice. I'm now ready to go on be successful for my new job. Following to this webinar, we will have also the pleasure to download a white paper that you've been working with us, Pat, giving us all those advice. And I think maybe we have now some time for some question. I don't know how we are. Is there any questions?
For which channel do you produce the most assets? Your website, your social media, or very good question. It is still our website. Our website is really the biggest kind of provider, but social actually is able to use. We now we don't shoot for our catalog or for our website. We just shoot for everything now. So the teams know that they need to shoot always a landscape, a close-up, like regardless if it's going to go on the website or not, so that the social team can pull out some of the images that have been captured at this point.
Okay, so there's another one popping up to, some more are coming. So, Pat, the next one is, what are the challenges you come across within your process?
So one of the questions that always comes up is, I always begin with how many assets do you think you have? And the interesting thing is no one ever gets that right, because normally the idea of what an asset is may be confined to a single instance of a broader set. Karen, you mentioned your teams are taking long shots, close-ups, horizontal, vertical, overhead, maybe some drone shots, right? There's all sorts of different things you might have. And so the first sort of baseline we have to set is what all the elements are that are actually should be considered assets. And then look at what processes are used to manage them. And typically, it's not uncommon to find that each asset is being managed by a different team, each type of asset. So the video assets are managed over here, and the audio assets are over here, and the catalog assets are over here, and the website assets are over here, and the teams are not communicating, and they may have developed habits that cause them to use different tools. So the first thing we want to do is get our arms around what are all the assets and how do we bring them under one heading.
Okay, I think we still have time for a last question. I think this one is probably for both of you. Are you beginning to implement AI for pattern recognition, such as Apple Photos? If you search for onions, it's automatically look for onions patterns. So, Karen, have you already experimented it?
We have not used it. We know it's a capability that is it's not round the corner. It is available. I would say that the artificial intelligence, you need to feed it with information first before it can recognize anything. So it sounds amazing, but I feel like for colors, let's say, I would say for us, it might be if you wanted to recognize just all the red collection, let's say you want to do a Valentine's thing, that would be super useful. And that doesn't need to feed in most information. It's around the corner where we're not using it, but we know it's there and looking forward to it being used for us, yeah.
And Isabel, if I can add, please? So think about organizations where they have not yet put in their meta tagging and their content management, and they have avoided it because they don't know how they're going to handle their legacy collections. Working with a quality AI provider who understands image recognition and pattern recognition could be a fast path to getting from a legacy collection to a fully meta-tagged collection. So I would say that especially if you've been waiting, this would be a great time to be investigating AI providers to get you there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so thank you. I think we're reaching the end of this session. So I was very happy, and thanks again being with us, Karen, Pat, today. You really share with us very valuable information and knowledge. We're just now ready to meet afterwards for our concert. So I hope we will see all of you into the concert lobby. And I thank you again for this last episode of our Duo on Air Season 3. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.